Your sleep app isn't just tracking your rest, it's watching your brain and selling what it finds to people you'll never meet. Every night, millions of people open an app before bed. They press play on calming sounds. They follow guided meditations. They track their sleep cycles, and they think they're just trying to get better rest. But here's what they don't realize. These apps aren't just helping you sleep. They're collecting some of the most intimate data that exists about you: your sleep patterns, your dreams, your anxieties, your health indicators, even your brain activity if you're using certain devices. And all of this data is being packaged, analyzed, and sold, not just to advertisers, but to insurance companies, pharmaceutical firms, researchers, and people building AI systems that can predict your behavior. The sleep technology industry is worth over $28 billion, and it is projected to hit $80 billion by 2030. But the real money isn't in subscription fees. It's in data. Your data. Data that reveals things about you that you probably wouldn't tell your doctor or your spouse. And it's all being collected while you're unconscious and defenseless. This is the strange business of dreams, where companies have figured out how to monetize the 1/3 of your life you spend asleep. And what they're really selling isn't rest, it's you. Let me start by explaining what these sleep apps actually do. On the surface, they seem straightforward. Apps like Calm, Headspace, Sleep Cycle, Pillow, Slumber, and dozens of others offer sleep sounds, meditation guides, sleep tracking, and various features to help you fall asleep and sleep better. You put your phone on your nightstand or wear a smartwatch. The app uses your phone's accelerometer or the watch's sensors to detect movement. It tries to figure out when you're in light sleep versus deep sleep. It tracks how many times you wake up, how long it takes you to fall asleep. Some apps even record sounds to detect snoring or sleep talking. This all sounds helpful, and for many people, it is. There's legitimate value in understanding your sleep patterns. If you're consistently waking up at 3 a.m., that's useful information. If you're snoring heavily, you might have sleep apnea and should see a doctor. If you're not getting enough deep sleep, you can try to adjust your habits. So I'm not saying these apps don't provide a service, but what's happening behind the scenes is much more complex and concerning than most users realize. Let's talk about what data is actually being collected. First, there's the obvious stuff: sleep duration, sleep quality scores, how many times you woke up, what time you went to bed and got up. This seems innocent enough, but it's more revealing than you think. Sleep patterns correlate with all kinds of things: mental health, physical health, stress levels, work performance, financial stability, even relationship quality. Someone who's sleeping poorly for weeks on end might be depressed, or dealing with a health problem, or having work troubles, or going through a breakup. The sleep data tells a story. But the apps are collecting way more than just sleep data. They're collecting contextual data. What sounds or meditations you choose, what time you typically use the app, whether you use it consistently or sporadically, what other apps you have on your phone that they can see, your location data if you've granted location permissions. Some apps ask you to journal about your day or rate your mood. Some have dream journals where you write down what you dreamed about. All of this is data. All of it is being stored, and much of it is being analyzed and sold. Let me tell you about a specific example. Sleep Cycle is one of the most popular sleep tracking apps. Over 50 million downloads. They track your sleep using your phone's microphone and accelerometer. They wake you up during your lightest sleep phase within a window you set. Helpful features. But look at their privacy policy. And this is public information. You can read it yourself. They collect device information, usage data, location data, and sleep data. They share data with third parties for advertising and analytics. They use something called de-identified data for research and development. De-identified means they remove obvious identifiers, like your name and email. But here's the thing, sleep patterns are so unique that it's often possible to re-identify people even from supposedly anonymous data. It's like a fingerprint. There was a study by researchers at MIT and Harvard that looked at mobility data. They found that just for location points, or enough to uniquely identify 95% of people. Sleep data is similar. Your specific pattern of when you sleep, how long, how often you wake up, combined with other data points, creates a unique signature. So when companies say the data is de-identified, that doesn't mean it's truly anonymous. It just means they remove the easy identifiers. Someone with access to other data could potentially re-identify you. Now let's talk about who's buying this data and why. First, there are advertisers. Sleep problems correlate with all kinds of purchases. Someone who's sleeping poorly might buy supplements, medication, new pillows, mattresses, sound machines, therapy services. Advertisers want to target these people, so they buy data from sleep apps to identify potential customers. You might notice that after using a sleep app for a while, you start seeing ads for sleep products. That's not a coincidence. The app sold information about you to advertisers who are now targeting you. But advertising is actually the least concerning part. What's more interesting is the pharmaceutical and insurance industries. Pharmaceutical companies want to understand sleep disorders and develop treatments. They're willing to pay for large datasets showing how people with different conditions sleep. An app with millions of users has incredibly valuable data for drug development. They can see patterns across huge populations. How do people with depression sleep differently than people without? How do different medications affect sleep? What sleep patterns predict the onset of certain conditions? This data is worth millions to drug companies. Insurance companies are even more interested. Health insurance companies want to assess risk. Someone who sleeps poorly is statistically more likely to have health problems, heart disease, diabetes, mental illness. If an insurance company can access your sleep data, they could potentially adjust your premiums based on your risk profile. Now, in most countries, it's illegal to discriminate based on health data for insurance purposes. But there are loopholes, and regulations vary. Life insurance companies in particular have more leeway. Some are already asking applicants to share data from fitness trackers. It's not a huge leap to start asking for sleep data. There's also employment. Some companies are experimenting with wellness programs that track employee sleep. The justification is that better sleep means healthier, more productive employees. So companies give employees fitness trackers or encourage them to use sleep apps, and they collect the data, ostensibly to help employees. But what happens if your employer sees you're consistently sleeping poorly? Might they conclude you're not performing well? Might it affect promotion decisions? Most employment contracts have clauses about how wellness data can be used, but those clauses are written by lawyers working for the company, not for you. Let me tell you about a company called Oura. They make a smart ring that tracks sleep, heart rate, body temperature, and other biometrics. The ring is expensive, $300 to $500, but it's become popular with biohackers and quantified self-enthusiasts. Oura collects incredibly detailed physiological data, and they've been very strategic about it. They've partnered with researchers, providing free rings to participants in scientific studies. This generates research that validates their product, but it also gives her access to medical data from those studies. They've partnered with companies doing COVID-19 research, using their rings to detect early symptoms. Noble goal, but it also means Oura has collected health data from thousands of people. Oura's business model isn't really about selling rings. The rings are expensive to manufacture. The real value is in the subscription. $6 a month for access to all the app features and insights. But more importantly, the subscription keeps users engaged and generating data continuously. And that data is the real product. Oura has said publicly that they're exploring opportunities in healthcare and precision medicine. That's code for we're going to sell your health data to medical companies. They claim it's anonymized and used only for research. But as we've discussed, anonymization isn't as protective as it sounds. There's also a darker application: behavioral prediction. If you know someone's sleep patterns, combined with other data, you can predict their behavior with scary accuracy. When are they most vulnerable to marketing? When are they making poor decisions due to sleep deprivation? When are they most likely to spend money impulsively? Companies building predictive models want this data. Casinos would love to know when you're sleep deprived and likely to make bad decisions. Online retailers want to know when to hit you with targeted ads. Political campaigns want to know when you're most susceptible to messaging. This might sound paranoid, but this is exactly what Cambridge Analytica was doing with Facebook data, building psychological profiles to target people with customized messages at optimal times. Sleep data is even more valuable for this because it reveals cognitive state. Are you tired, stressed, depressed? All of this affects decision-making, and all of it can be inferred from sleep data combined with other behavioral data. Let me talk about the AI angle. Machine learning systems need data to train on. Lots of data. Sleep data is particularly valuable for AI systems being developed for healthcare applications. Imagine an AI that can predict heart attacks based on changes in sleep patterns, or detect early signs of Alzheimer's, or predict mental health crises. These are legitimate and potentially beneficial applications, but they require massive data sets of sleep data combined with health outcomes. Sleep app companies are sitting on exactly this kind of data, and AI companies are willing to pay for it. Google has been particularly aggressive in this space. They acquired Fitbit for $2.1 billion. Fitbit tracks sleep along with other health metrics. Google says they won't use Fitbit data for advertising, but they are using it for AI development. Google wants to build health prediction models. They want to integrate health data into their ecosystem, and sleep data is a key part of that. When you use a Google Home device with sleep tracking, or a Fitbit or Android phone sleep tracking, you're feeding data into Google's AI systems. Amazon is doing the same thing. They have a product called Halo that tracks sleep, activity, body composition, and even analyzes your voice to assess emotional state. It's incredibly invasive, but people use it because they want the insights. Amazon is building out healthcare capabilities. They acquired One Medical, a primary care provider. They're developing prescription delivery services. They want to be involved in every aspect of healthcare, and data is the foundation. Sleep data helps them understand customers better and build better health prediction models. Apple is more privacy-focused, at least in their marketing. They've made privacy a core part of their brand. Apple Watch tracks sleep, but processes most data on device, rather than sending it to the cloud. They've implemented differential privacy techniques. This is genuinely better than what Google and Amazon are doing. But Apple still collects aggregated data, and they're using it for AI development too. They're just more careful about how they do it and how they talk about it. Now let's talk about something really strange: dream analysis. Several sleep apps encourage users to keep dream journals. You wake up, immediately open the app, and write down what you dreamed about. The apps use natural language processing to analyze your dreams. They identify common themes. They track whether your dreams are positive or negative. They look for patterns. And this data is incredibly revealing. Dreams reflect your subconscious thoughts, fears, and desires. Analyzing someone's dreams over months or years reveals deep psychological information. There's an app called Shadow that's specifically designed for dream tracking. They're building a database of dreams. The stated goal is to understand the science of dreaming, to find patterns across populations. But they're also analyzing individual dream patterns to provide personalized insights. And they're open about the fact that this data could be used for all kinds of applications: therapy, creative inspiration, problem solving, but also potentially marketing and behavior prediction. If you know someone's recurring dreams and fears, you can target them very effectively. There's even more experimental technology, devices that interact with dreams. A company called Prophetic is developing a headband that's supposed to induce lucid dreaming using ultrasound stimulation. You wear it while you sleep. It detects when you're in REM sleep. Then it supposedly stimulates your brain in a way that makes you aware you're dreaming without waking you up. This is cutting-edge neuroscience, and it's completely unregulated. Nobody knows the long-term effects of messing with brain activity during sleep, but people are willing to try it because the idea of controlling your dreams is appealing. Prophetic is collecting data on brain activity during sleep. They're using it to refine their algorithms, but they're also building a data set of brain activity patterns during dreaming. This is neuroscience data. It reveals how your brain works, and they're a private company with investors who want returns. There are no regulations preventing them from selling this data. They could sell it to researchers, to AI companies, to anyone willing to pay. And because it's such a new field, most users probably don't even think about the privacy implications. Let me tell you about the subscription model and why it's so effective for these companies. Most sleep apps are free to download with limited features. Then they offer subscriptions for premium features, $7 to $15 per month typically, or $60 to $100 per year. These might seem like reasonable prices for a service that helps you sleep better. But here's what's really happening. The subscription isn't primarily about generating revenue from subscription fees. It's about keeping users engaged so they keep generating data. Think about it. If you pay for a subscription, you're more likely to use the app consistently. You feel like you should get your money's worth, so you use it every night. The company now has continuous data on you for months or years. That longitudinal data is much more valuable than sporadic data. They can see trends. They can track changes. They can build much more accurate models of your behavior and health. So even if the subscription fees barely cover the cost of running the service, it's worth it because of the data. Some companies have even more sophisticated models. They offer free premium subscriptions to specific groups. Healthcare workers during COVID got free subscriptions to Headspace and Calm. This seems generous, and maybe it was partially motivated by altruism, but it also gave these companies massive amounts of data from a specific demographic. During a stressful period, the data is incredibly valuable for understanding stress, trauma, and mental health. It can be used to develop new products and services and potentially sold to researchers and pharmaceutical companies. There's also corporate subscriptions. Companies buy subscriptions for all their employees as part of wellness programs. The employees get free access. The company gets aggregate data on employee wellness. And the app company gets huge data sets plus validation from major corporations. It's a three-way win, except possibly for the employees whose data is being collected and shared, even in aggregated form. Now let's talk about the regulatory landscape, or rather, the lack of one. Health data is supposed to be protected under laws like HIPAA in the US and GDPR in Europe. But these laws have loopholes when it comes to wellness apps. HIPAA only applies to healthcare providers, insurance companies, and their business associates. A consumer app isn't covered by HIPAA even if it's collecting health data. So sleep apps aren't bound by HIPAA regulations in most cases. They have to follow general privacy laws. But those are much weaker. GDPR in Europe is somewhat stronger. It requires clear consent for data collection. It gives users the right to access their data and request deletion. It limits what can be done with data. But enforcement is inconsistent, and companies have gotten good at writing privacy policies that technically comply, while still giving them broad latitude to use data. The policies are long and complex. They use vague language like, "We may share data with partners for legitimate business purposes." What does that mean exactly? It means whatever the company wants it to mean. The Federal Trade Commission in the US has started paying attention to health apps. They've issued guidelines. They've brought enforcement actions against some apps for deceptive privacy practices. But they're understaffed and overwhelmed. There are thousands of health and wellness apps. The FTC can't possibly monitor them all. So most companies operate in a gray area. They're not doing anything clearly illegal, but they're also not being transparent about the extent of data collection and use. There's also international data transfer to worry about. Many of these apps are developed by companies in one country, but used globally. Data might be stored on servers in multiple countries. What laws apply? If you're in Europe using an app developed in the US with servers in Asia, whose privacy laws protect you? It's murky, and companies exploit the murkiness. Let me tell you about what happened with COVID-19. During the pandemic, sleep disruption became extremely common. Stress, anxiety, isolation, all of it affected sleep. Sleep app usage exploded. Downloads increased by hundreds of %, and companies started positioning themselves as mental health solutions. Headspace and Calm in particular pivoted to focus more on mental health and stress management. They added content specifically about coping with pandemic stress, noble and helpful. But it also meant they were collecting even more sensitive data, information about people's mental health struggles, anxiety, depression, trauma. These companies partnered with researchers studying pandemic mental health. They provided data to studies. Some of this was genuinely valuable research, but it also normalized the idea of sleep and mental health apps as data collection tools for research. Users stopped thinking of these as entertainment or self-help apps and started thinking of them as quasi-medical tools, which makes the data they collect even more sensitive and valuable. There's also been a move toward clinical integration. Some sleep apps are now being prescribed by doctors. Doctors tell patients to use specific apps to track sleep or do cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. This is called digital therapeutics, and there's legitimate evidence that some apps can be clinically effective, but it blurs the line between consumer wellness product and medical device. If a doctor prescribes it, patients assume it's regulated like medicine, but it's not. It's still a consumer app with minimal oversight. This also creates new data flows. If your doctor tells you to use an app and you share your data with your doctor, the data might now be covered by HIPAA. But the app company still has the data too, and they might not be covered by HIPAA for their copy. So the same data exists into places with different protections. Confusing and potentially problematic. Let me talk about the accuracy problem. Most sleep apps aren't actually that accurate. Studies comparing sleep app data to gold standard sleep studies done in labs have found significant discrepancies. Apps tend to overestimate sleep time. They misclassify sleep stages. They don't detect many awakenings. This is because they're using indirect measures, movement and sound, not brain activity. Real sleep staging requires electroencephalography, EEG, monitoring actual brain waves. Apps can't do that with a phone on your nightstand, so the data being collected might not even be accurate. You think you're getting insights into your sleep, but the insights are based on flawed data, and the company is collecting this data. No, it's not perfectly accurate, but they still present it as meaningful, and they still sell it as if it's reliable health data. This raises ethical questions. Is it responsible to collect and sell health data that you know is inaccurate? If someone makes health decisions based on faulty app data, who's responsible? There have been cases where people thought they had sleep disorders based on app data. They went to doctors, ran expensive tests, only to find out nothing was wrong. The app was just inaccurate, but the anxiety and expense was real, and the data about that false sleep disorder is still in a database somewhere, still potentially being used and sold. Now let's talk about the social dimension. Sleep tracking has become a status symbol in some circles. People compare sleep scores. They compete to see who's optimizing their sleep better. There's pressure to perform even in your sleep. This is kind of absurd if you think about it. Sleep is supposed to be rest, but we've turned it into another thing to measure and optimize. Another way to judge yourself and compare yourself to others. Some apps have social features. You can share your sleep data with friends or join communities of people tracking sleep. This creates peer pressure. It also creates more data. Now the company knows not just your individual data, but your social connections. They know who you compare yourself to, what communities you identify with. All of this is valuable for building richer profiles. There are even sleep influencers, people who post about their sleep routines, their sleep optimization strategies, the devices and apps they use. They're often sponsored by sleep tech companies. So you have influencers promoting sleep products to their followers and encouraging those followers to use apps and share data. It's marketing that looks like advice from peers, very effective and very insidious. Let me tell you about a specific case that illustrates how problematic this can get. In 2021, researchers discovered that data from a fitness app called Strava was revealing the locations of secret military bases. Service members were using the app to track their runs, and the app published heat maps showing where people exercised. In war zones, the only people exercising in certain locations were soldiers on military bases. So the heat maps revealed where the bases were. This was a massive security breach, and it happened because people didn't think about the implications of the data they were sharing. Sleep apps could have similar issues. If you're traveling and using a sleep app, it knows where you sleep. If you're a government official or military member or corporate executive, that location data could be sensitive. Who knows what hotel you stayed in, when you were there, how well you slept. Maybe you were there for secret negotiations. Maybe you couldn't sleep because you were stressed about something sensitive. All of this is being recorded and potentially accessible to people who shouldn't have it. There's also the hacking risk. Any data that's collected can potentially be stolen. Sleep app databases are targets for hackers because the data is so personal and potentially embarrassing. Someone's sleep-talking recordings, their dream journals, their sleep patterns when they're having affairs or struggling with addiction. This is blackmail material, or at minimum, something people would pay to keep private. We've seen data breaches at fitness tracking companies. Ashley Madison, the affair dating site, got hacked, and all user data was released. It's not hard to imagine similar breaches of sleep data. Some countries' intelligence agencies are almost certainly interested in this data. If you can access the sleep patterns of foreign leaders, military officials, business executives, that's intelligence. You know when they're stressed, when they're traveling, what they're worried about based on their dream journals if they keep them. This is the kind of information that intelligence agencies traditionally spend huge resources trying to obtain. And now it's just sitting in commercial databases with mediocre security. Let me talk about children. Many parents use sleep apps to track their children's sleep, or they give teenagers sleep apps to help them sleep better. Kids' data is supposed to have extra protection under laws like COPPA in the US, but enforcement is weak. And once again, there are loopholes. If a parent downloads an app and tracks their child using the parent's account, is it the parent's data or the child's data? Legally ambiguous. There's something especially troubling about collecting sleep data on children. Their brains are still developing. Their sleep patterns reveal a lot about their development, mental health, family situation. This data could be used to profile children, to predict which kids are likely to have mental health issues or behavioral problems. That could be used for good, like early intervention, but it could also be used for discrimination. Schools or insurance companies making decisions about children based on their sleep data. That's a dystopian possibility that's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Now let's talk about the future of this industry. Where is it going? First, the technology is going to get much more sophisticated. We're moving from simple accelerometer tracking to actual brain activity monitoring. Devices like Prophetic's lucid dreaming headband are just the beginning. There are companies developing pillows with built-in EEG sensors, mattresses that monitor heart rate and breathing, ceiling-mounted devices that use radar to track sleep without any wearables. The goal is to make sleep tracking completely passive and automatic. You don't have to do anything. The devices just monitor you constantly. This will generate vastly more data, more accurate data that reveals more about your physiology and neurology. And all of the data will be collected and analyzed. The AI systems will get better at predicting things from your sleep patterns. They'll be able to detect diseases earlier, predict mental health crises, identify cognitive decline, all potentially beneficial, but also incredibly invasive. There's also going to be more intervention, not just tracking sleep, but actively manipulating it. Devices that use sound, light, temperature, even electrical or magnetic stimulation to optimize your sleep, put you in deep sleep longer. wake you up at the perfect moment, maybe even influence your dreams. This is neurotechnology, and it's coming fast. Companies are investing hundreds of millions in sleep tech because they see the opportunity. The market is huge and growing. The data from these interventions will be even more valuable because now you know not just how someone sleeps naturally, but how they respond to different interventions. This is clinical trial data being generated at scale in people's homes. Pharmaceutical companies would pay enormous amounts for this because it helps them understand how the brain works and how to develop better drugs. There's also going to be more integration. Your sleep data will be connected to your fitness data, your nutrition data, your work calendar, your social media, your smart home. Everything will be analyzed together to create a complete picture of your life and health. Apple, Google, and Amazon are all building toward this. They want to be the platform that integrates all your health and life data. The company that owns the platform has extraordinary power and insight into users. We're also going to see more personalization. Systems that learn your specific patterns and give you customized advice. Not generic sleep hygiene tips that apply to everyone, but specific recommendations based on your unique data. Go to bed 17 minutes earlier. Adjust your temperature to degrees. Avoid caffeine after 2 p.m. specifically. This personalization will be genuinely helpful, but it also requires extremely detailed data collection and analysis. You're trading privacy for personalized optimization. Let me tell you what I think people should do. First, be much more conscious about what apps you're using and what permissions you're granting. Read privacy policies. Yeah, they're long and boring, but at least skim them. Look for what data is collected, how it's used, and who it's shared with. If a free app is collecting tons of data and the privacy policy is vague about how it is used, that's a red flag. They're probably monetizing your data. Second, consider whether you really need an app. Do you actually have a sleep problem that needs tracking? Or are you just tracking for the sake of tracking? Many people sleep fine without any apps. They don't need data. They just need good habits. Dark room, cool temperature, no screens before bed, regular schedule. If you're sleeping well, you don't need an app to tell you that, and you don't need to generate data about your sleep. Third, if you do use sleep apps, use privacy-focused ones. Apps that process data locally on your device rather than sending it to the cloud. Apps with strong privacy policies that explicitly limit data sharing. Apps from companies that have a business model other than selling your data. Apple's built-in sleep tracking is better than most third-party apps from a privacy perspective. They're not perfect, but they're more trustworthy than a startup that needs to monetize user data to survive. Fourth, think carefully before sharing sleep data with employers or insurance companies, even if it's supposedly voluntary and anonymized. Once the data is out there, you lose control of it, and you don't know how it might be used against you in the future. Regulations change. Company policies change. Data that seems harmless now might become problematic later. Fifth, be especially protective of children's data. Don't track your kids' sleep unless there's a real medical reason. And if you do, use the most privacy protective options available. Don't share the data with anyone. Don't post about it on social media. Kids don't have the ability to consent to data collection about them. As parents, we need to protect them. Finally, advocate for better regulations. The current laws are inadequate for the reality of health data collection by consumer apps. We need laws that specifically address this, that require clear consent, that limit what can be done with health data, that give people real control over their data, that impose real penalties for violations. This requires political pressure. Contact your representatives. Support organizations advocating for digital privacy. Make this an issue that politicians have to care about. So here's the reality. The sleep tech industry has figured out how to monetize one of the most intimate aspects of human existence. The hours when you're unconscious and vulnerable, when your guard is down, when your brain processes emotions and memories. They've turned this into data, and they're selling it to advertisers who want to manipulate you, to researchers who want to study you, to AI companies who want to predict you, to anyone willing to pay. Most people using these apps have no idea how much data is being collected or how it is being used. They think they're getting sleep advice. They don't realize they're the product. The business of dreams isn't about helping you rest. It's about extracting value from every moment of your life, even the hours you're asleep. It's surveillance capitalism in its most intimate form, and it's only going to get more invasive as technology advances. Unless we push back, unless we demand privacy, unless we refuse to accept that every aspect of our lives should be monetized and analyzed. The choice is ours. We can keep feeding the machine, keep generating data, keep letting companies profit from our sleep, or we can opt out. We can choose privacy over optimization, rest over data, humanity over profitability. It's not an easy choice in a world that pushes us toward constant measurement and improvement, but it might be a necessary one. Because there's something deeply wrong about a world where even your dreams aren't your own. Next, we reveal the tech industry's darkest secret that affects every device you own.